afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are. Welcome to the REFIT Literary Symposium, celebrating House of Nahisi Publishers' 7th Annual Caribbean Literature Day. It is a pleasure to welcome you. Here in the room, we have some renowned guests that you will get to know. We have some in-person attendees that live here in Kingston, but it is a pleasure to welcome you from all over the world. Jamaica, America, London, St. Lucia, Trinidad, Bahamas, St. Martin. So I'm going to start straight away, and I'm going to introduce our first speaker. Her name is Casey Garvey. So Casey, would you like to stand coming towards me just so I know you're here?
Yes.
Let me just find what it is. We're going to have Casey just give you some words. But before I do that, what I'd like to tell you about Casey, in addition to being the founder of JQ Poetry, she's an award-winning Jamaican poet. She's a literary arts advocate, and her work beautifully bridges across spirituality and cultural legacy. She is well-grounded. In fact, she breaks ground in the theme of Jamaica's spoken word scene. She produced the nation's first and only full-length Christian spoken word albums, Undone in 2014 and Waterjar in 2018. So through all these works, she explores profound themes of human vulnerability, brokenness, divine restoration, all using poetry as a tool. She has won the prestigious Cecile de Jean Literary Prize, which is widely anthologized in the Caribbean Writer, and the National Library of Jamaica's New Voices Anthology, curated by Poet Laureate Lorna Goodison. So as the founder of her poetry organization, she's a powerhouse for a championing of creators. She served on the board of Jamaican Copyright Licensing Agency. She is fiercely dedicated to protecting arts and rights, and I welcome Casey Garvey.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm pro-choice because I was born into a race of people who had no choice. People whose ankles were bound before their feet could walk, who were handcuffed before their hands cupped their mother's breast to nurse. Slavery is woven into my history, tighter than the coils of my hair and tattooed deeper than the color of my skin. Now, I'm not talking about being black because I'm going as far back as Eden. Because of Adam, every atom of my body has been infused with sin. Because he decided to sell out his perfect nature, even my cells out of God's perfect will. Sin in me is so ingrained that by simply having a mouth, I'm spewing lies, and lust is just a consequence of having eyes. Free will is a precursor to my rebellion's rise, and now I'm sinful self-righteousness in human disguise. I'm pro-choice, because I was made in the image of a God of choice. While the first disobedience was Adam, the first obedience was light. When God said, "Let there be light," light by its very existence put up no resistance to God's insistence that it be. Mere men can look into the eyes of the all-seeing God, say to the voice that spoke the universe into being, be the only creation that can defy the creator and say, no. I'm pro-choice because I was made in the image of a God who had choice. God could have killed us, but he chose to be killed by us so we could live through him. This is a God whose hands chose to form Roman soldiers in their mother's womb, knowing that they would one day grow up and pierce those very hands with nails. A God who chose to breathe a breath of life into Pontius Pilate, knowing he would cast a death sentence over him. A God who looks into the depths of my desperately wicked heart, sees the ugliness of my sin, and chooses to forgive me every single time. I'm pro-choice because I've been reborn into a race of people who have choice. God has placed before us life and death, and I choose life because Christ tasted death for me. He didn't swallow because the grave was too shallow to hold him for more than 3 days. So now I can taste and see that the Lord is good and his mercy endures forever. I can choose to walk away from sin because his feet were nailed for me. I can choose to turn my back on him because his back carried my cross. I can choose to be redeemed, choose to be restored, choose to be renewed. I'm pro-choice, and I choose Christ.
Fantastic. And actually within time, I was going to give you 5 minutes. You only took 2.5. So this is perfect time. I'm going to get Katie to stay with me. You may be thinking, why is she presented? You should be able to see the agenda. And if you can hear in the background, somebody's sound speaker going off in the Sunday. So this is just normal in here in Jamaica. And I love it. Unapologetically, as you see from the colors, Jamaican and Caribbean. Anyway, back to the agenda. We have Professor Merle Collins. She's currently based in the University of Maryland. Casey's about to sit down. We have Casey Garvey, for those of you who tuned in a bit later. She has just given a tasting, a sprinkling of what she covers in JCU, her poetry founding organization. And a huge shout out to Katie Webb, who has just joined online. Welcome, Katie. She is linked to the International Authors Forum because Casey also has strong connections with the International Authors Forum that covers the Caribbean chapter. With no other waiting, is it Kwame or is it Mr. Marcus? So not yet. We're actually going to do these introductions first. So I'm going to welcome Mr. Marcus Bird. I put him on the spot.
Well, greetings. My name is Marcus Bird, and I wear many different hats. You know, the first hat I wear is obviously this one. No. So I'm a writer, filmmaker. I actually studied filmmaking at Howard University. So interesting story I tell people is that when I went to Howard University originally, I was doing computer science. And people would look at me and say, but you're so artistic. And I remember when I was in high school, one of the things and the conflicts I had going to the school called Campion College, which is one of the top schools in Jamaica, very competitive, is that I was this artist. And I was this artist, but I was very conflicted because I thought that to be smart, you had to do math and science and physics and chemistry. And when I went to university, I ended up, well, maybe I could do like, design video games or something like that. And long story short, I went through this long journey and ended up doing film because it's writing and visual and so on. So a lot of people don't know that about.
It's a pleasure to introduce you, Marcus. This is an award-winning writer, filmmaker, and all-round creative practitioner. His work is captured across global areas of the world. As we know, global areas of the world, all areas of the world. Born here in Jamaica, he is a cultural observer whose storytelling has been shaped by his own lived experiences in Tokyo, in dance halls of Kingston, and the art lofts of Tokyo in Japan. Nurturing his craft in academia via Howard University, his professional background is as diverse as his literary works. He has got decades, even though I'm looking young, well, he has decades of experience in the entertainment and marketing industry. He pushes genres, Caribbean genres. He is just completing his return from Sharjah, where he marketed Rasta Wolf, which I know he's going to get into. He's a Commonwealth Short Story Prize nominee and a 2021 Jamaica Cultural Development Commission, JCDC winner, and he's internationally known, and here is the floor.
Wow. After that, I should just walk away and leave. Yeah, man. So I know there's a question. You said the questions come after, right?
Yes. So you have 5 minutes.
Yes. So to everyone who is on the stream, greetings, as I was saying. The reason why I said that original story is because it took me a lot of painful circumstances to understand that I should have just accepted my artistic side from the beginning. I was doing computer science and I was competent. I was doing like physics and stuff and I was getting good grades, but I know I aged myself at a Kwame. But it was a long time ago, but I remember it was winter time and I was looking outside at the and I was in this apartment 7 miles outside Washington, D.C., because I had to move off campus into this apartment. And I remember just standing there looking at the snow. And I said to myself, what have you always done? What do you do, like effortlessly? What are your interests? You know what I mean? And I said to myself, well, you're always watching films and you're always writing. And then I said, you know what? I think that's the lane I should take. And when I looked at my curriculum that I had completed up until the fracas happened with school, everything I had done fit exactly into the film degree for Howard University. So I went to the film school, which is a school of communication, a different school. And I remember talking to the advisor, her name was Miss Bernadette. And I said to Miss Bernadette, you know, I'm a writer and all I want to do is write and I'd love to join the film program. She looked at my transcript and said, sorry, your GPA is too low. You need at least a 2.0 to get in. And I was like, you know, and I told her I wrote scripts. I told her I wrote a novel already by that time. I'd written a novel and 2 movie scripts, you know. And she said, wait, you wrote full scripts? And I was like, yeah, I can show you the script. And she said, all right, try your best and have a good semester and then come back. So that semester was my best semester ever. I took 6 classes and got 5 A's and 1 B. And the B I shouldn't have get, and I still bad mind the professor. But I got a 3.8 GPA and it took me from wherever I was to 1.98. Remember, I need 2.0, you know. Went back to the school and Miss Bernadette said, and I said, please, you know, don't let my life hang in the balance for 0.02 GPA. She spoke to the dean let me in. And actually that semester I got a 4.0, I got on the dean's list and I got a trustee scholarship. And for the rest of my time at school, I didn't get less than, I got 1 more B, but all A's. So I was one of the best students in school history. What I like to say to you is that a very important component of finding yourself as an artist is understanding that the messages are always there from the beginning somewhere. When I went to Campion and I was 11 years old, I was known around school as an artist because I would draw faces of people. I could sketch the teachers. I used to make comics and everything. At lunchtime, they used to crowd around me and say, yo, what bird draw? What? Come on, last name is Bird. What bird draw today? And from then, I don't know why I didn't accept it. Yeah, and then I had this column, a comedic column inspired by Daddy-O called Bird's Eye View. I did that when I was 18. And I would just write about Jamaican culture and so on. So it's a long history of me doing these things and then not realizing that maybe I didn't fully embrace it. And in 2013, I said to myself, I want to release 3 novels in 1 year. Why? 1, because I think if you release 3 books in a year, you can hit the market running, right? But also I felt like I could do it. I know that, you know, I can write like 10, 15 pages a day and I went after it. And it didn't take me a year. It took me 8 months. And I learned about landing pages, book launches. I learned about Amazon. I learned about all the ways that you promote. I learned about a decade of information in those 8 months. And starting from that point, I did 3 books in a year. Then over the next 8, 9 years, I released 7 books. And I actually gave up in 2021. Fast forward to 2024, I'm in California visiting a friend. And I go to Atlanta because he has a film studio down there. He wants to show me. And I'm staying with a lady named Cynthia. And she says, do you know that there is this comeback of werewolf novels and fantasy novels and the genre is kicking off? And I was like, really? And then, I just casually said, well, I could write a werewolf book. And she's like, yeah. And I was like, Rasta Wolf. And she's like, oh my God, that's such a good title. But I took it seriously. And I said, yeah, a werewolf book set in Jamaica, kind of like Twilight. It could be a trilogy. I think I should do it. And I got so fired up. I wrote the book really fast. It took me about 6 weeks. And then Rasta Wolf ended up being the book that I was promoting when I went to the Sharjah Book Fair in 2025, right? So we took business class flights, it's called Emirates Airlines over there. And when I was on the plane, I couldn't believe that my creativity was giving me this experience. So the reason why I told you the story about university and so on and loop it into all of this is to let you know that you never know where an idea can take you. And when me and Kwame, who you're going to hear from after me, were presenting on stage in front of all these people from all over the world, or pictures were in the book and everything, it let me know that if you know your idea has a home, the key's already in your pocket. And sometimes the road's a little dark, but with a little bit of light, you can find your way.
Round of applause there for Marcus. I'm so happy. I'm happy because you guys are, you guys don't understand how big.
Oh yeah, and we met.
Just about to say.
In Dubai.
So, and that's why I'm happy, because these guys are huge. In fact, in this room right now, in the team's room, the people that I know, some of you are already writers. Some of you are already publishers. Let me tell you something. Those of you who don't know, I'm coming in from the UAE. I've just come back into Jamaica. The Caribbean is big in the GCC. And just Marcus alluding to that it just fills me with so much joy, because I am unapologetically a lover of our archipelago, all of our islands. It is with no further ado, though, I'm going to introduce Marcus, if I can ask you to sit down. I'm going to introduce the other half of the team that came out to Sharjah. But this gentleman didn't just come out to Sharjah. He came out to Abu Dhabi, because he was invited by the ruler of Abu Dhabi to represent the Caribbean for the Abu Dhabi Book Fair in April 2025. So I'm going to ask Mr. Kwame McPherson to please stand up next to me, so the room knows who you are, the virtual room knows who you are. This is a stalwart of a Caribbean. This is a towering figure, and it is an honor to introduce this person, this figure of Jamaican heritage. Not that he's old, but he's not on the other side of young, you know what I mean? He's a dynamic speaker. He's an amazing orator, and he has made history as Jamaica's very first global winner of the prestigious Commonwealth Short Story Prize in 2023. He has been invited from everywhere, to Buckingham Palace, to Rome, to the Vatican in Rome, to all kinds of book fairs all over the world. And when I met him in the Middle East, I heard about him much more than I saw him. Everybody said, do you know this person is coming to Jamaica, coming to Abu Dhabi from Jamaica? He's representing the whole Caribbean. I said, no. Although I love us, we are an archipelago of countries from Cuba all the way to Trinidad. But the fact that he was Jamaican made me very happy. He's not just an author, though. This gentleman, what distinguishes Kwame from other authors, he has a sharp, strategic and business-like acumen to him. He's very, very driven with his academic profile. He has a Master's of Business Administration from the University of Westminster, and he has qualifications from the London Metropolitan University as well. He is an accredited lifelong trainer. He continues to pave the way for the next generation of storytellers with an added edge of highlighting narrative identity and showing the way in which the ambitious resilience of our people and our spirit is revered around the world. So you see how he's a different context to Marcus? The floor is yours, Kwame. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Alrighty. Hello, everyone here as well as online. And thank you, Riona, for the, intro. I would always kind of get kind of shy and, introvert and, when people are talking about me. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to share something, because as Rihanna said, I do love writing. One of the things about, and my journey is similar to Marcus's, because I didn't leave high school with a bag of subjects. You know what I mean? I left high school with, funny enough, the subjects that I'm using now. You know what I mean? So which is interesting in terms of how the journey happens. And yeah, myself and Marcus went to the Middle East, and were well received, and potential for other things to happen. There's huge possibilities for us to work in partnership. So that's coming. But in the meantime, I don't want to talk too much about me. I just want to talk about my craft. All right. So recently in Jamaica, we had a huge blackout right across the island. And immediately, because one of the things we identified when we were in the Middle East, is that we as Caribbean people don't write in genres aside from the normal cultural reference genre. So, for example, Marcus is writing a fantasy horror in a completely different genre, which we're not normally seen in. And we had discussions with people in the industry over there about what we're choosing to write. Because one of the things that were taught to us, and which I'll share, is that there's a lot of room for Caribbean writers, not just in terms of what we write normally, but what we can write outside of the comfort zone. So Marcus is doing horror fantasy. I do a lot of things in action thrillers. I write westerns. I write nice sci-fi, romance, you name it, right across the board. I challenge myself as a writer to write in different genres, because that's where the opportunities lie for us as writers from the Caribbean, because not many of us are in these genres anyway. And we can write from a reference point which is cultural and which is not seen by others. So my story that won, for example, my award-winning story back in 2023, was around a Jamaican, African Caribbean man traveling through Florida, and he gets stopped by the police. I'm going to read an excerpt from that, but I want to read something prior to that. There's a lot of cultural references with it in my story. So it's a cross of Jamaican folklore, family, from a Caribbean perspective, elements of sci-fi, African Caribbean history, so on and so forth. So there was a mixture of that's within a contemporary story, and that's what the judges loved. Now, and as I was going to say, recently, across the island we had a blackout, right? Everybody experienced it, don't it? Yeah? All right. So I immediately realized, based on, and I'm certain, I'm not going to say that I'm the first, but I'm going to say, I'll put in something out there, which is going to be a short story based on this particular experience. Now, I've already created the cover, right? I don't know if you can zoom in. You can zoom in and see the cover. Yeah, man, I don't know. Oh, it's not on the screen. But it's called Blackout. All right? You're getting a preemptive view about something that's coming out, you know. Because one of the things that I realized as a writer, and because I love writing short stories, is that a lot of people gravitate, because the attention span kind of shorter. You know what I mean? So short stories tend to have a lot of mileage, as well as novels, because I do write novels too, but I love writing short stories. So this is called Blackout, all right? And it's an actual experience which me, Marcus, and Casey here had, and Ray on the wife at the Pegasus, because we went to Pegasus at a particular event, and then I just started writing. So I'm going to share with you just an excerpt. How long ago? Oh, yeah, all right. So it's called, all right, so it's an excerpt, so it's a draft. Sudden, darkness. As quick as I blink, everything goes black. I'm not asleep. I'm in the middle of a banquet at a prestigious hotel. The dining room was packed with guests, just into their second course, when the electricity went out. Just like that, as if someone somewhere snapped off the light. This is unprecedented. Then a message pings on my phone. The Army headquarters is on fire. My phone vibrates. It's the director. Ladies and gentlemen, he begins, and this is when I'm jumping over now to when to reach the office. He begins. Tonight, we encountered an unprecedented event, and I'm telling you what you've already experienced. He pauses. At 9 p.m., the entire electricity grid was lost across the entire. There was also a fire at Opal Camp. There are few murmurs and someone inhales loudly. They hadn't heard or read the news. We are under attack. He continues. The information we've decided, including the electricity company, to put out is that there had been a lightning strike, damaging vital substations. All the media houses will be sharing that message. We don't want a spooked and worried public. Any panicking right now will be detrimental to the country. You don't need me to say why. We don't know who did this or why, but we need to get to the bottom of this. The sooner the better. So on and so forth. Anyway, so thank you. So, and I share that because I want to share my craft in terms of how coming from high school, getting the subjects that I did, but not realizing that what I got has enabled me to write an award-winning story, which took over the entire world. And there's a lot more to come from that. But as Marcus said earlier, it's not from where you're coming from. It's where you're actually going and the vision that you have for yourself. So with that, I'm sure we'll be back on later on. So I'll back over to the beautiful Rio now.
Wow. Seriously, wow. So I'm going to ask the cameraman if you could just turn the camera to a gentleman who has got an iPad just here. Some of you may know this gentleman. If you don't, I'm going to introduce you to him. His name is Mr. Chris Record, and he is the chairman of the National Artificial Intelligence Task Force for the whole of Jamaica. Did I get that right, Chris? Okay. The reason I'm introducing you to this stalwart of a governance director and photographer and business owner and just a creative without the words.
Oh, yes. And he's a wine specialist.
He says, if you ever come to Kingston, Cellar 8, right? Cellar 8 is where you need to be. But no, the reason I'm mentioning him to you is because later on, we're going to talk about some new interventions and new initiatives that are coming into publishing spaces, and it is linked to Web 4 methodologies. Those of you who do not know me, I am a champion for digital publishing and owning your intellectual property. And so the reason I've asked Chris to come here today is because Jamaica, listen, we had the things, you know, you see, we look small, but Talawa, we have got, you can hear the British as well, right? But you can hear there's a lot happening. And Trinidad and Grenada and St. Lucia and Barbados, we are definitely doing some things in creative spaces. So I'm really glad you've joined me today. And I'm going to ask you if I can now pan to Miss Gemma Weekes. Gemma, let me introduce you first, because Gemma's interesting. Miss Gemma Weekes, let me please just give you a little bit of an intro before you start. This lady, from fiction and poetry to screenplays and lecturing, Gemma Weekes is a multidisciplinary creator who truly has a way with words. Described by The Independent, that's the UK tabloid newspaper, described by The Independent as a name to watch, her critically acclaimed debut novel, Love Me, which was published by Chatto and Windus, was hailed by The Guardian, another tabloid UK newspaper, as a shimmering debut and celebrated a fresh, gritty take on modern love, migration, and the music scene. So she is also a British Caribbean. Gemma, the floor is yours.
Our lives had rhythm, the days lit neon, and our nights pitch as the falling edge of a dream. And via complex systems of airlocks, we made dry places where we could feel our own weight, and wet places where we could move silky through the deep, frolicking with the current, breathing easy as fish. And the pressure you'd think would crush our skulls sculpted our cheekbones hard and round as guavas, densified our muscles and gave us long, narrow eyes grown hyperscopic, toned our limbs, smoothed our skin so sleek it was enough to make cocoa butter cry. And we made for ourselves magnificent woven tails and jewelry from what had once been shackles. And we were free of hunger and violence, with no politics except who could laugh loudest, no dogma but gratitude, no death or pain of birth, police or schools, mental institutions or prisons, advertising or psyops, no politicians, and no niggas or niggers, just soft, jet black souls surrendered to shadow, joined as only the wounded can join, all different, sworn smooth in the deep. And the lovers, if you focus, close your eyes and slow your breath, you can sink down into Lewiston, noiseless as mercury, and see this world for yourself. Listen good and you can hear a sound so faint it registers at first only as a change of mood, a warmth spreading from some unknown nexus. Then the feeling resolves into melody, and melody into voice, the tone midnight, each note long, low and steady. Falling, falling to the bottom of the sea, to the melt at the bottom of the world. And if you let your eyes adjust, if you open the sight behind your sight, you can pick out the sheen of her skin from the surrounding darkness of the cave where our lovers live. Heavy, so heavy, all the waves atop of me. The sun has gone away, left me lonely. The girl woman we call memory, who will one day be Charlotte, sits cross-legged on a shark rib couch in a storm of hair, rocking softly to the music pouring out of her, quick, slender hands weaving a new tale for the big celebration, the second centennial coming up in just a few months. Mother, 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 memory is singing, every shade of the blues and legato in multi-part harmony with herself. And if you squint, allow your eyes to adjust, you'll see the arm draped around her. Follow the line of a lean shoulder. You'll see the soft gaze swimming into view, lips and white teeth. The man we call Future, who will one day be Basquiat. The light kiss he presses to her cheek. Stop there.
So all I'm going to say is, Gemma, you were mesmerizing. I left the room here, we're here in person, and they were all watching the TV screen because you became immersed in that reading. I was looking at the chat screen, and those people who had their screens on, Creative Leadership and Innovation Management Bureau, you are on full show right now, and your expressions, you are engaged in Gemma's reading. Professor Opal Palmer Adisa is a master or a queen storyteller who understands that the word is a healing balm, and it brings me immense joy to introduce her exceptional talent. She is literally a bedrock of Jamaica and the Caribbean archipelago. She is a visionary in her own right. She is an activist in her own right. She is a literary gem and has shaped discourse in this country and this region for over 3 decades. She is exceptionally wide in the range of her creative works. It includes widely praised debut novels. It begins with tears. It moves on to so many. I'm going to showcase, if I haven't already done so, I will do while she's talking, the breadth of her magnificence of her work. She has a creative catalogue that is formidable. She also has an academic profile and a series of published papers that just go on, and I get immersed into her work, have done for years. She's born in Kingston. She's a world-class educator. She has taught at some of the elite institutions of the world, including Stanford, UC Berkeley, the California College of Arts. Regionally, here in the Caribbean, she has made a profound impact on the University of the West Indies cohorts. She's not only a writer of literature, she's also a builder of literary infrastructure through publishing, editing, developing festivals. She developed the Louise Bennett Coverley Festival. She's got her own residency. She's written documentaries alongside creatives such as Mr. Roy Tenny Miller here in the room today, who's doing our filming all over the world. So, Prof. Opal Palmer Adisa, the floor, my dear, is yours.
I want to say thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Williams, for organizing this. But I want to give a big shout out to Lasagna for the vision, because he was the one who came up with the concept. And I remember when he told me about it for Caribbean Literature Day. And although we are technically a small region, although if I reconfigure Mia Motley's idea of the Caribbean Sea, we're not so small after all. But we've produced a formidable body of literature, and have produced some of the most important writers for this century. And I'm sure we'll continue to do that beyond. So honoring and recognizing Caribbean Literature Day is fundamental and important, because our work need to be shared and need to be taught. So I'm going to read from my latest collection. I have a new one that will be coming out next year. This one is called The Storyteller's Return, and I'm just going to read several poems. It's divided in 5 sections, and I think I'm looking at the clock, so I'll keep within my time frame, because coming on after me is a Caribbean writer whose work I've taught and respect tremendously. Rubicon. At 15, she got on a plane and left. If you leave, you will never be able to return. At 20, she got on a plane and returned. If you return, you will not remember that you can never leave. At 30, she forgot what she knew and left again. If returning was to happen, she would have to sing a Sankofa dirge. At 50, she returned heedless of the smell of longing. Home was tattooed on her brain, a brand without a house. My grandmother has been locked in a house made of wood with barred windows, so nights is perpetual. Her nails scrape the wall, and a tiny voice that does not belong to her squeals. You can never remove me from home. And so, as I said, the poems are divided into various sections. This one is called Home. How to make your house your home. And it's a poem that speaks to a lot of people. Use a ladder and climb to the roof. If you're afraid of heights, conquer your fear. See what the house sees. Notice what blocks the house views. Listening to the house's grumble, then come down and wash around the house. Inside, press your palms to the walls. Invite your ancestors, only those who loved and affirmed you, to smoke out the house. Take a shower, then press your wet body to the walls so your scent is penetrated. Tell the house it is becoming your home. You might have to really convince it. The house will transform when and only when you kneel to your own desires and rinse home from the skeletons of your childhood. Grandma cautions, be ready for the unexpected, or it will make you blame your own child for coming when she comes, and you will lose out on the anonymity. This next piece is called, I have marked it, if I can find it. So this is about returning, it's about home, it's about, the stories we tell ourselves. That are the memories we store. This is called turning. She often kept company with birds. The yard man with his pronounced Adam's apple taught her how to whistle like various birds, frequently neglecting to trim the edge. They shut the storyteller away in the closeted room devoid of colors, said she was delusional. They were giving her time to follow the rules, to stop being a heresy, creating chaos firms. Keyman locked the door and gone. No room to bargain. The mirrors held to the nose, not a smear. Mirrors are covered with white lace, her shoes put by the front steps. Keyman's death executioner came in the middle of the night. Just as she got into bed, he locked her door. And all the wailing of his name, bitter as heresy on her tongue, will not breathe back life, but still they chant, Keyman, Keyman. The drummer counters, Keyman locked the door and gone. They move cautiously, aware sooner than later their door will be locked. They move cautiously. They cannot oppose him. Ready or not, when he puts the key into the lock, only the living will sing you goodbye. But really they sing to Keyman, hoping their dirge might keep him away from them another day, another year, a little bit more time. Feet stomp into the ground, the middle of their palms connect in a harsh clap. They hold each other around the waist and twirl and bump, their voices fervent, constant, bewailing, Keyman, Keyman, pleading, don't come around here anymore. The drum knows the truth and sends the message, loud and clear into the air, leaving no doubt. Keyman done locked the door and gone. Thank you.
Prof, the range that you gave of just a sprinkling of your work, from music to just the power of your voice and the impact and the diversity of what you gave. Thank you so much. And again, I've chosen these creatives to share today because of their diversity and range. Can you please introduce this lady I met at the Association of Women Writers and Scholars. So if you do not know about this organization and you are a woman or you are an ally of a woman, so that means you can be a man as well, you know. So anybody who is interested in the Association of Women Writers and Scholars, I implore you to. It's an amazing group. And I called it Heaven While Alive. I met Merle and she touched me. But before I even tell you about why she touched me, let me tell you about who she is. Professor Merle Collins is exceptional. She is not just a writer, she's a cultural architect of our region. She is someone who has been prolific in her field and in her country. The last thing I will say before you begin, she's a powerhouse. She's a critical scholar. She's focused on elevating Creole orality and nation language. And the beauty of why she's here, she is a understated supporter of next generation literary arts. Professor Merle Collins, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Thank you for generous introductions all around, and also for giving the time and thought to organizing this literary symposium so that so many of us have a chance to interact, to get to know more work, to be informed, to enjoy Caribbean literature as well. So it's great to be here, and I like Professor Opal Palmer Adisa. I want to say also thanks to Lasana Sekou and the House of Nahisi Publishers for years of important work in promoting Caribbean writing. So to begin, I will read an excerpt from my novel, The Color of Forgetting. The Color of Forgetting is set in the imaginary Caribbean islands of Paz, which is Spanish for peace, and Eden. And people tell me that Paz and Eden feel a lot like Grenada and Carriacou. But it's set in these imaginary Caribbean islands. And the focus of the piece I will read is a discussion, a conversation going on between father and son. The father is called Ned, and the son is called Thunder because he seems to have a thing with thunder. He's always afraid of thunder, so his friends nicknamed him Thunder. You hear my name, Thunder? Ned said without preamble, as if he was continuing a conversation. You hear my full name, Ned Batcher Peter? Yes. Well, you know what the Peter is. I tell you that already, about how your grandmother talk about Peter and the rock. And you know what the others is? No, you never tell me. What? Well, one come from the nigger side and one from the coolie side. African and Indian daddy. Well, okay. I mean, it's so we say it's and that not nothing. But all you young people these days with your ideas, okay. African and Indian then. African in truth, yes, the Ned part. It come from a Ned in slavery days that dead right in the market in Eden. They used to have a Sunday market long ago in slavery times. You know about slavery times, eh? I suppose you do it in school. Well, some of it. We're doing some of that now. Well, you know, the big up white people and them take people from Africa and bring them here as slaves. Ned, no, was a Eden man. I never bring you over to Eden yet, but that was where he was living. And I don't know what his African name was before Ned, but they say he was a slave in Eden, you know, and they beat him and they kill him in the market. Just like how your mother talk about somebody called John Bull. That's what they used to call him, John Bull, somebody that they beat and kill in the family. Daddy, we learn how, we learn in school how sometimes was the driver they used to get to beat people, the driver on the estate. That is right. Was a driver they get to beat Ned. In those times there, driver was there to beat people on those estate to make them walk and things like that. And it's like they didn't have no choice about beating and even killing their own kind, because they're working for somebody else. It's a hard thing to accept that it happened, but it's like we walking against ourselves from time, child. It's a hard thing to accept, but it's true. Ned, no. Ned used to work in the corn business, planting, reaping, sorting, and things like that. But they say he always used to take the corn afterwards when they put it in the storehouse, So, well, he was kind of rebellious because he worked for nothing, he feel, and then he had to hide to get a little bit in what he self worked for. Child, the wickedness of the world. Thunder didn't say anything. He had picked up a stick and he was digging it into the soft red dirt on the hill. They beat him merciful, Ned continued. Beat him until the body and the spirit couldn't take no more and he go off and meet him maker. And nobody of our people, the black people, the African people who they used to call slaves, like Ned and so, they couldn't do a thing to help him. So now is the generations to come. You see, the ones like you and everybody else who get an education have to write Ned's name in the ground, have to say and do all the things that Ned couldn't say. You have to write things down, well, writing or whatever is the fashion these days. And child, slave is not shame. It's not you that do something. Well, by you, I mean the person who was slave. Who to shame is not the slave, but is who put them so. The white people and them and those of your own African people self too, you know, not all, mind you, but those who greedy for money and selling their own people and so. But mind you, child, that is not nothing strange. Thing like that happen in all country from time, in all generation. Perhaps not always slavery self, but people pushing other people down. It happen. But the point is not you to shame. I know we have a style with us shame as if those other people and them, they're so important, and we self, we acting as if it's we to shame. But child, I want you to understand, is something my grandmother, their mother in Eden, always used to tell me before she died. You have nothing to be ashamed about in that direction. Nothing to shame at all. That is what she used to tell me, my grandmother. Nothing to shame of. Thunder looked up at the sky and he saw the clouds beginning to gather behind the mountain. He moved his eyes away quickly, looked at his father's face. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you so much to Raona Williams and to Casey Garvey for introducing me to this network and for giving me a chance to talk to you about the International Authors Forum, and particularly the Caribbean chapter of the International Authors Forum, of which Casey Garvey and her organisation JICU is one of the founding members. The International Authors Forum is a network of international organisations for writers and artists from across the world. We represent 90 organisations on all continents, between them representing close to 1 million authors worldwide. So, what do we represent for authors? Well, we represent authors' rights, particularly their copyright. That is, their legal right to make a living from their work and to have control over and to be able to protect their work through those legally instilled rights that they gain automatically when creating their work. The IAF Caribbean chapter is a specific regional network, and it's also made up of organisations like JICU in the Caribbean, but it's more informal, so it's also open to individuals who are interested in protecting authors' work, but who might not be represented by an organisation yet or might want to found one. And who are interested in empowering authors, assisting them to monetize their work, and educating themselves, the general public, and other authors about the importance of copyright and authors' rights to enable authors to make a living and to sustain them in today's globalized, digitized world where cultural and linguistic diversity are threatened by the greater powers, those who are financially dominant in the world. And so authors in their full diversity and us having access to their work is more important than ever. And we know that the Caribbean is full of linguistic and cultural diversity, and that is fundamental to its identity. What we really think is essential to our work as the International Authors Forum is that it is an act of community between writers and all types of authors, that they come together for the greater good of their profession. And so that is why authors standing in solidarity together is absolutely crucial. It's crucial that in this globalized world, we do so at the global level in order to protect our national and cultural identities and the diversities within those nations, within those cultures that are so crucial to human existence. So please do sign up to the International Authors Forum mailing list and become part of IAF's Caribbean chapter.
Hello, everyone. My name is Doris Hambuch. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Languages and Literature at United Arab Emirates University in Al Ain. First of all, profound thanks to Dr. Rauna Williams and the House of Nehesi Publishers for organizing these festivities. It's a great honor for me to take part in it because I've been a fan of Caribbean literature for the past 3 decades. I'm sorry I can't be there with you, or at least be live online, but I need to be traveling. So my interest in Caribbean literature came about because of a study exchange with the University of Columbia, Missouri in the United States, when I was studying for my master's degree in an English department at a German university. In Missouri, I got to know a great number of students from the Caribbean, and the year was 1992, which you all know was the year Derek Walcott was awarded the Nobel Prize. And when I returned and had to find a topic for my thesis, it turned out that my supervisor, Professor Dr. Klaus Martens, was one of Walcott's German translators. So the signs were clear. And in the following presentation, I'll explain how this initial interest developed into many research projects and also has influenced my teaching, specifically at UAEU, where I have several courses in which I can teach Caribbean literature. I've been working at UAEU for the past 18 years. But prior to that appointment, I studied and taught Caribbean literature in a few other places. So I will also give a bit of background on my PhD program in Canada and subsequent publications before I discuss the courses I currently teach in the Department of Languages and Literature. As I was working on my master's thesis, which became a comparative study of place or geography in Derek Walcott's and Elizabeth Bishop's poetry, I had the opportunity to visit the friends I had met in Missouri in their homes in St. Lucia. A special shout out, and you can read this in the acknowledgements of my PhD dissertation, goes to the Daniel family, part of which you see in the picture on the left. They made sure that I got to know every corner of the island, and they helped me get settled for my research at the Castries Library. On one of the excursions, we came across Walcott's friend Dunstan St. Omar painting the mural that you see on the right. The oldest daughter of the Daniel family, Anne Daniel, had performed as Helen from Omeros in a documentary made on the occasion of the Nobel Prize. She dedicated this picture to me, in which you see her with the author and the Swedish camera crew. A younger sister, Gemma Daniel, eventually came to visit me in Germany in turn. My home in Germany is on the border with France. And during the same year, I also had a chance to listen to French Caribbean authors in Strasbourg. I remember Édouard Glissant in dialogue with Jacques Derrida there, and Patrick Chamoiseau and Raphaël Confiant introduced their Éloge de la Créolité. So when I moved to Canada for my PhD, I joined a program in comparative literature, where I could conduct cross-Caribbean research. I discovered that the Dutch Caribbean tended to be neglected in this kind of approach. And because I could read Dutch well, as a result of fluency in German and English, I tried to remedy this neglect in my dissertation titled Displacements in Contemporary Caribbean Writing, Contemporary around the turn of the millennium, that is. Here you see some of the authors I discuss in subsequent publications. I focused on Frank Martinus Arion from Curaçao and Astrid Roemer from Suriname, for example. Edouard Glissant's theoretical writing continues to influence most of my work, and Walcott always features, since his oeuvre is so diverse. The course that explicitly invites Caribbean content, and I teach this course very frequently, is a course called Anglophone Literature Outside the US-UK. There, I always like to begin with Louise Bennett's Colonization in Reverse early on. We start with a performance from YouTube, and the students end up all puzzled. Then we listen again with the text in front of us, and they find that they can actually read the vernacular. When performances are accessible, I also like to include theater. Tijon and his brothers was very popular, for example. On the graduate level, the first course in the MA program is called Storytelling in the World. That's the last one you see listed here. It offers very similar opportunities to include Caribbean texts, just that the discussions are more sophisticated, of course. Those students do prepare readings, and they don't have any of the language barriers that we find a lot among the undergraduate students. Nevertheless, sometimes there's a group of undergraduate students that can rise to the challenge of an in-depth study of Walcott's work. We have a 400-level seminar dedicated to one particular major writer. The third to the last time this seminar was assigned to me, I did teach Walcott as the chosen major writer. The students in that group responded very well, got a good insight into his style, his breadth, and his relevance for post- and decolonial studies. You can see here some examples of research posters they created. And two of these students even developed their projects into presentations for a student conference the Sorbonne branch in Abu Dhabi hosted the following year. Here you can see Sheikha Al-Ali discussing her interpretation of the play Pantomime. And here we have Ayazia Al-Blushi presenting her close reading of the Schooner R.E.F.I.T. Both the presentations stimulated fruitful discussions. To conclude, I return to my personal library of Caribbean literature. I'm rather proud of this ever-growing collection that, needless to say, includes a few House of Nehesi publications as well. These are all primary sources. I have a separate shelf of secondary sources in my office, and I do have a few books on Kindle as well, but I'm still more of a paper reader. And I do appreciate the decorative feature, along with the fact that it's so much easier to lend print books. That's it for me. I wish you all the best with the festivities, and that we keep in touch.
I just want to congratulate you for staying in the room, virtual people, for the last hour, because it just is testament to the greatness of the impact from Casey Garvey, Marcus Bird, Kwame McPherson, Gemma Weekes, Professor Opal Palmer Adisa, and Professor Merle Collins' impact on such a special day. And I'm so glad, I was going to do this afterwards, but I'm so glad you thanked Lasana Sekou, because this is the 7th year. And I don't know how many of you know Lasana Sekou, but he is a real visionary when it comes to bringing our region together when it comes to literary arts. I've actually prepared some questions for these amazing creatives. And I'm going to start with Casey Garvey, who was the first one that spoke. And your question, Casey, with Undone, your publication, and Waterjar, your second publication, you pioneered Jamaica's first full-length Christian spoken word albums. What was the experience like introducing deeply intimate, faith-based themes into a spoken word scene that is historically secular or socio-politically driven?
It was a very exciting experience because I think that if you have faith in anything at all, it should be public intimacy. So the intimacy is what drives what the content of the poems, but then I am so passionate about it. I believe in the love and compassion and tenderness of God. I want to share it with the public. And I know that for a lot of people have good, viable reasons to not want to go to church, to not want to hear about it. But if you can at least repackage it and put it in a different robe, you can at least trigger somebody's imagination or curiosity about something they've long put aside. So I try to say, okay, if you're not going to come to church or to a crusade, will you listen to a poem? Can I bring a poem to an open mic? And that tends to be a pretty effective way of sharing my faith.
Wow, thank you. Your latest novel, Rasta Wolf. Yeah. This is why it was in my head, right? Yeah. Reimagines Jamaica through mythology, folklore, and fantasy in a way that is rarely seen in Caribbean literature. As an award-winning filmmaker, photographer, and creative director, how did your visual storytelling background shape the world of Rasta Wolf? And what inspired you to transform Jamaica's itself into this epic, like supernatural character and series of adventures?
All right, thanks for that question. All right, so first of all, I come from a generation where I used to play this video game called Castlevania, Castlevania. Okay. Castlevania is a vampire hunter game. So, from that time, I also read books like Dune, Frank Herbert. So I was big into fantasy. I wasn't into Lord of the Rings as a kid, but I got into it later. But fantasy has always been something interesting to me. And when I wrote my first set of novels, they weren't fantastical, but they always had some fantastical elements. But when I thought of this concept of Rasta Wolf, it's like I just asked a question, what would it be like to have magic in Jamaica? Because when I travel around the island, it's very magical. We have the hills, we have the caves, we have the sea, we have the rivers. We have this mystery about the history of Jamaica. You go to like Spanish Town and you see the brick. You go downtown and it's so different from Upper Kingston. And I said, all of this is a real place. And imagine if in the midst of this, you have these supernatural beings. So when I was writing this, I said, I have never seen a large, compelling fantasy story set in the Caribbean. And I said, as a Jamaican, I think we have enough here to put the magic there. And that's why I put Rasta Wolf here, because I said, I can make Jamaica a character in this book. Because we have the music, we have the food, we have the patois. Even the villains in the book, or like the protagonist and the villain, originally I had a plan in the beginning, somebody going to come from Europe. And that's like the secret person. But I was like, no, man, Jamaica full of bad man. So I said, let me try and make the characters more consistent, and I got really deep into it. So Rasta Wolf as a werewolf novel, it's not like, magic and fire and flames. It's actually a very contemporary story. You have a woman that comes to Jamaica from Germany. Typical thing, she's a tourist. She meets a young man, but instead of it just being like a typical love story, the supernatural element starts to unfold as they get to know each other. So you learn about the island, you learn about the balance between foreign culture and local culture, the history that we have, because many of us have unusual histories in Jamaica. If you go back, if you look at a lot of people, like look at me and Rona, dark skin, right? But our great grandmother could be white or mixed. And I use some of that in the story as well, where it's like, one of the characters doesn't know their origin story, because we have European, we have African, and it really makes us interesting.
I found out about your book in Sharjah, and I took it to work. Now, of course, when you go to the Middle East, it's music and it's Bob Marley. So the minute I said Rasta, it's Bob Marley Wolf. I said, no, no. Because that is the way in which that region of the world still they showcase the Bob Marley movie because it's just come out. And so the fact that there's so many layers to that publication, I've read the first 2 chapters, and the fact that you use that first part of it was the dog. There's a section where everybody feared a dog.
Yeah.
And it was just a different way you wrote about it. Like, you actually weren't afraid of that dog in that part of the book. So and I'm not just plugging it.
Yeah.
I would recommend Rasta Wolf. Mr. McPherson, you are a Caribbean stalwart who has made history through your works. And your non-fiction candidly explores your personal journey. This is a very deep question, especially in these times. How do you balance potential vulnerabilities that may emanate from sharing your personal journey with the expectations of creating a powerful and professional historical archive of regional cultural legacy? And before you answer, the reason I've asked this question is because Kwame wrote a book about his mental health journey. And it is extremely revealing. You actually feel like you know the person by the time you finish the book. So I read that, I think, but this man just won the prize and I'm going to Buckingham Palace and he writes about business. So that's why my question is posed to you.
You see, because that question was so deep, I can't just talk about it off the top of my head. So I had to write it. I had to write the answer. All right. So this is my response. I enjoy and love telling stories. Stories shape us individually, every day, week, month, and year. They form our lives and are our lived book. For me, as a griot, writer, and storyteller, writing and sharing stories must include my personal journey. I am the main character who drives the story, with each actor playing their role within it. Therefore, when sharing, whether it's fiction or non-fiction, my lived experiences, I must bring my authentic self. So every story that I've written is a completely original story. I don't use AI unless it's for research. Acknowledging my vulnerabilities and being open about them. Internalizing or hiding emotions increases pain, raises stress, and can lead to ailments and dis-ease. Storytelling is therapy. My story is my background, culture, and rich history. Everything is absorbed into a homogeneous, organic mat of tales, resulting in the final written word. Nothing escapes. The power of my stories lies in their transparency, challenging the status quo, and sharing the essence of who I am and who we are as a people. So as Rihanna shared in terms of my date with depression, that was a story of a personal journey about my experience with depression, and it is available online. At the moment, I'm just thinking about having a official book launch, which is something I should have done some years ago, but I'm thinking of having an official book launch. So that's a personal story. But every story that I write or I have written, there's an element of me in it, and a writer will have an element of themselves within a story. So Okohi, which is the award-winning story that I wrote, was basically about my particular experience of going through Florida, driving from Miami up to the Panhandle, which is the middle of Florida, and being stopped by the police. Now, at the time, and that's how the story actually starts. But at the time, nothing untoward happened to me, but my character, my protagonist, something else happened to him. So if you get to read it, you can www.granta.com/Okohi, OCOEE, and it's still available online, even though Granta has stopped sharing Commonwealth Short Story Prizes because of the AI controversy, but it's still there. And you can read and see about that particular character and there's elements of myself within him, within that protagonist.
Thank you. So we're going to move to Professor Opal Palmer Adisa. Can you unmute for me? And then we're going to take a question to Gemma Weekes and then finally to Professor Merle Collins. So Professor Opal Palmer Adisa, I'm going to give you a question now. In 2008, you were awarded the Caribbean American Heritage Legacy Award for your cultural activism and your great works. Did receiving that regional recognition influence your decision to both be the founder of the Louise Bennett Coverley Festival, so that was all your brainchild of an idea and works, and then to launch, as mentioned before, the break, the Adisa Ancestry Artist Residency. And if it did influence you, what part do you think your residency and your works can do to contribute towards strengthening our next generation's our creative archipelago's infrastructure and burgeoning digital orange economy? Heavy question.
Oh God, yes, and a very good question. And I don't know if I'll answer all of it, but I'll certainly answer a part of it. So that award was very important to me. I was living in the Bay Area in California, which is where I was given that award, because I was doing a lot of activism, working with a lot of young people in the various schools, young people who were considered borderline students, and so poetry school as well as teaching at the university. I have to say the greatest influence.
Oh, there's an echo.
Yeah, I have to say the greatest influence for the Adisa Ancestry Residency, which was a 20-year dream, was actually being awarded a residency at Sakatara in Brazil, which is an amazing residence. And I thought, well, why don't we in the Caribbean have such places for Caribbean writers and Caribbean artists? So I carried that dream with me, I kept thinking, oh, I have to be rich because, I have to have an endowment or find a rich philanthropist, and nobody was coming forward. And so I then decided, I can't wait. I didn't want to die with my music inside of me, my dream inside of me. So I decided to do it with whatever funds and resources I had. And I'm very happy I did that. But more importantly, came the festival that I'm still trying and need support for, financial support for, but I'm forging ahead. So for me, it's important that our young people understand the continuity, that don't just believe that because they come up and start spewing poetry that they're the first ones. They need to understand the people who paved the ground for them. Louise Bennett was such a person. Claude McKay, even before Louise Bennett, his Ballad of the Policeman was written in the Jamaican Nation language. Lula Morrison, and they don't know these people. And it's important that they understand that there is a lineage and there is a trajectory, and their responsibility is not just to come and spout what they spout, but to understand and honor these literary ancestors and their legacy and what they created. Because as Muta Baruka says, if it wasn't for Miss Lou, who he dubs as the first dub poet, we wouldn't have what became dub poetry, because of her singular, insistent fight that what we spoke was not patois, but nation language. And I want to make that clear, if nothing else, that I think we should stop referring to what we speak in Jamaica as patois, which means a dog's paw, and refer to it for what it rightfully is, nation language. And we saw it so efficiently articulated in Merle Collins' reading from her novel in some of the way in which I integrate my poetry. And I also think, and Merle and I come from a different generation where for us, it was never just about us. It was always about connecting to our community and giving back. So my activism, the Adisa Ancestry Artist Residency, is making that historical connection, but also providing a space. And I'm hoping other people will provide many more spaces in Jamaica and throughout the Caribbean where artists can come and work.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
So, Gemma, your question. Speculative fiction. It's a very interesting term. It offers unique creative fiction. And freedom. Unique creative freedom. Do you feel this genre is of importance for the Caribbean diaspora? Partly because you're a British Caribbean yourself. But do you also feel it is important to explore contemporary themes, or do you think we should be focusing more on traditional realistic narratives, very much like Prof. Opal and Prof. Merle do? If so, how else can these genres and those interested in Caribbean literature that is contemporary be enlightened further on how to develop or stimulate this in their own work?
I would say the first thing I would say, I think there is space for all of it, and we need to make space for all of it. We need to make space for a multiplicity of voices, especially in the Caribbean. For myself, I was born in the UK, so in the UK I've always felt St. Lucian, and in St. Lucia I've always felt British. So there's always that kind of sense of never fully being home in yourself, which is it's destabilizing, but it's also it's an invitation really to explore the liminal and the intersection of culture and even what culture is, you know. So I think that the realism is always going to have its place in terms of being able to represent what is and to archive what is and to document what is. But I think that the speculative realm is fantastic for being able to dream into, think into spaces that defy knowledge. I can't go back. There are things I will never understand or know about my own history. And I think the act of myth making allows you to locate yourself where you are. If that makes any sense. We can begin to dream ourselves space to start now. What does that look like? What are our own myths that support our own healing? What are our own myths that begin to answer the question of where we belong?
Okay, last question. So guys, please keep, if we're 1 minute over, if you're able to stay for the never, ever, ever, the least importance, the last is always the most important. And this is yourself, Professor Merle Collins. You shared such poignant work about Ned. And this is from your book, The Color of Forgetting. And my question to you is about Ned, because I was listening to you and I know a little bit about the book. So again, if you don't know it, I recommend you go and look at The Color of Forgetting by Merle Collins. So this character Ned, Prof, the father of a little boy, usually known as Thunder. Please tell us a little bit more about Ned. Where did you find him? You know, what empowers me, Mel, is you 26 decades, you're still writing amazing works. So where did you find him? How did you find him? And what does he refer to? And why is he interesting to you?
Before I begin to answer, I also wanted to say that the last is not always the best. And let me say that, today was a real revelation for me. So thank you to everybody for that. But also, when Ned is concerned, Ned is a character. I sit in the Public Records Office in London, London's archives, researching Grenada's history. And there I came across this character, Ned, on Carriacou Estate in 1815, who was actually beaten to death. And there was also another character, John Bull, this one in Grenada, who was also beaten to death by a white carpenter. And both things happened like in the marketplace. So as I was researching the trauma of all of that history, and I was focusing on Grenada, but the trauma is there for all Caribbean history. And in a sense, it's not, although it's realism, it's realism, made me create this character, Ned, in the 20th century, and his son, Thunder, who is always hearing this thunder in his head, and he's so afraid of thunder. And at the end of the piece I read, you realize he looked up at the clouds because he find, up there looking kind of dark, and he's afraid that he might hear the sound of thunder. So Thunder, then, what is happening with him is that he has ancestral memory, because he comes from Ned's experience, but he doesn't only come from Ned's experience. We talk about how the Caribbean mix up. One of his ancestors is also that white carpenter. So in his head, he has the story of the victim and the perpetrator. So this is his inheritance in the 20th century, that kind of mix-up Caribbean story that he, as a character today, is trying to deal with. So in a sense, I walk through marketplaces, and as we're talking about realism and other kind of forms in the Caribbean story, those are so close together that I never think, okay, this is a realist novel and this other one that I'm writing is not that. It's because they are mixed up. You have a character in that same novel, The Color of Forgetting, who is called Carib, and the novel was written before the Dominicans and others, Creole people started saying, it's not Carib. We're not going to call ourselves Carib because that's Columbus' story, is Kalinago. At the time that I was writing the novel, it was Carib. And even the change, is something else, because that is our society. We're moving forward. We're discovering, until lions have their own historians, the tales of hunting will be in the, until lions have their own historians, the tales of hunting will glorify the hunter, as the saying goes. So now a lot of what contemporary Caribbean writers are doing is doing that, being their own historians and their own, creative writing people, so that the stories change. And when younger people are writing, I often learn something, because to me the voices change, but we're not saying, hey, it has to be that story of the past. To me, all of it belongs to us as we try to figure out our way of existence. I'll give you a kind of long answer there because, I'm trying to...
Oh, my goodness. What I heard in you, Mel, was such a youthful answer in, you have to continue your activism through your creative works. That's what I heard in terms of Ned is posited in you still wanting to make sure that you uncover, that you reveal, and that you continue your work from, as I said, the 80s to now. And you still look so young with it, may I say. Your skin is glowing.
I could look old, it's all right, but...
I'm going to close. What I'm going to do actually is say a huge thank you to all of you that stayed on, because I know some of you left. So I'm going to just, if it's okay with you, I'm going to, call you out by name. Kalila, Feline, Dr. Delroy, Donette, Diana, Deborah, Creative Leadership, Adren, Bonner, Kyron, Lisa, Louis, Paris, Margarita, Ricky from the UK, my alternative. We're doing this whole curriculum. This is another reason why we're doing this case study of that. So welcome, Ricky Gardner. Cheryl Bryan, storyteller extraordinaire. Simone, Stephanie, Tansia. There are so many of you. I've personally emailed, I've personally contacted, and I'm going to definitely make sure we do a summary. All of you in person, you are going to get a summary, and we're going to do a part 2. Even if you can't attend, you're going to get a recording and you will get followed up. I won't stalk you. I won't go too intense, but I will keep in touch. All right. It's so important. Prof, I'm going to mute myself, and I'm going to ask you to share your questions. It'll be the last message of the day. But before I do, thank you guys so much for sharing. Lasana's going to be proud because I'm going to share with him afterwards the success of today. Please email, keep in touch with me so that I can keep this momentum going and share it. We want the whole of the region to pick up. Blessings, love, and sincere gratitude, and have a fantastic Caribbean Literature Day. Bye-bye. Wow.